Hi, you guys. This is Jamie with Whatever's Clever Boutique, and today we are going to remake my Valentine's Day peekaboo tumbler, except we're going to do St. Patrick's Day this time with a little bit of a twist. I will have everything that I used listed and linked in the description box below. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. To start, we're going to use our 40-ounce Big Betty from the Tipsy Magnolia, and we're going to go ahead and remove that lid as well as the handle. I twist out the screw from the bottom and the top back and forth just to relieve some pressure off of those little stubs that the handle attaches to. It's a little hard to explain until you try and take one off yourself. You'll kind of understand what I'm saying there about the pressure that's put on those little stubs. So once that's removed, we're going to go ahead and prep our tumbler with some adhesive apothecary warrior paint. Then the glitters we're going to use for our base are You Love Me and Banner, both from Peachy Olive Glitters. So with this paint, it is super awesome. It actually has an adhesive in it, so you don't have to base paint and then put like an epoxy or a glitter glue or anything like that over it. It just acts as your adhesive and base all in one. So I'm going to do an even coat of this paint, and then I'm just going to sprinkle on that glitter. Once we get that all painted, we're going to sprinkle on that You Love Me glitter. Now, I'm not going super heavy-handed with this. I'm just going to sprinkle this on so that our chunky pieces lay flat, and then I'm going to fill the rest in with our banner. Because this is our base coat of our peekaboo, we don't want it super bulky. So we want to be sure that all of our glitter is laying flat, that we don't have to apply a ton of epoxy over top to get this smooth, because it just will make it a lot harder when we go to reapply that handle way later in the game. Once I get that to my liking, I'm going to go ahead and tap that excess off and then just sprinkle that banner all over the tumbler to fill in any of those bare spots. Now, of course, because this is a chunky glitter, we're going to just roll that right onto our parchment paper. Make sure none of those chunky pieces are sticking up before we let that dry. Look at how pretty that You Love Me glitter is. I am seriously so obsessed. Once it's dry, we're going to seal it in with some Color Shot Clear Sealer. Then we're going to go in with 2 coats of our favorite epoxy. I use KSRESIN Liquidy Split Ultra UV Epoxy. And this is what it looks like under epoxy. Those glitters are just so pretty. Now we're going to go ahead and clean up our rim. I'm going to use my little, I think this is actually a nail file, not a Dremel, to clean off that rim. And we're going to clean it a little further down than we normally would. Just because this is a peekaboo, we want to be sure to have it down far enough that when we go to sand our upper layers down to expose that seal, or to expose that rim for our epoxy to seal to, you won't see this dark section underneath that upper section, if that makes sense. After we get that all done, we're going to go in with our actual sanding blocks now, just to smooth it out a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and go across the rim, and then I'm going to knock down any hard spots that are throughout the tumbler. Then we're going to go ahead and wipe our tumbler down with some 91% alcohol before we go ahead and get started with our stencils. I went and got my file off of Creative Fabrica for these different clovers, and I'm just going to apply these sporadically throughout the tumbler to my liking. You can do as many or as little clovers as you would like here. There's no real rhyme or reason, just place them as you see fit. I did use stencil vinyl to create these stencils. You can really use any vinyl. I don't recommend using permanent vinyl. If you're going to use regular vinyl, I would use removable. It's just going to make the process much easier later to remove that vinyl if it's removable. Once we get those all applied, we're going to spray paint our tumbler. I did a light green. I can't even begin to tell you where I got the spray paint. I have had it for quite literally ever. So any light green will work. And then I'm going to go in with my black Posca paint pen, and I'm going to go ahead and mark those stencils off so I can see them underneath the glitter. For our top glitters, we're going to use Eucalyptus, Chloe, Tinkerbell, Sea Glass, Melody 2.0, and Kokomo. These are all from Chase Ray Glitters, as well as Melody the Not 2.0. I'm going to go ahead and use the epoxy method today, so I have a very thin coat of epoxy all over my tumbler. Now we're going to go ahead and I'm going to do a swirl type situation on this tumbler with the upper peekaboo portion of the glitter. So I am just going to do like a normal swirl here. So as you can see, I started the swirl on one side, twisted my tumbler, and did the same thing on the other side. So I'm just creating a standard swirl here, and I am lightly applying my chunkier glitters on this go around. I'm not doing a heavy coat. We want a really light coat here so we can then work on blending with our finer glitters. So I will just let you sit back and watch as I just kind of go back and forth with all of these glitters, creating a swirl that I see fit for the tumbler. And this is all subjective. You don't have to swirl. You can pick your favorite lighter green as your top coat. You can do more of like a blotchy look where you just apply the glitters sporadically throughout the tumbler, not so much in a swirl motion. You can do whatever you'd like here. I thought the swirl was super fun and fitting, but again, do whatever you'd like here. Now that I have all of those chunky glitters laid, I'm going to go in with my finer cuts and I'm really going to start to blend those glitters together. I just apply the color of finer glitter over the similar color chunky glitter and just really start to pull the colors into one another to create a really good ombre look with our swirl. Once I get all of those glitters blended together to create my really pretty ombre swirl, I'm going to again pat down all of those chunky glitters so that when we go to apply that epoxy, we aren't battling with a whole bunch of chunky, pokey bits. So I just always recommend taking this step. You really don't have to, but I really would. Now for the tedious but most satisfying part. As you can see, we can still see those lines from our paint pen underneath there because these glitters were all pretty transparent for the most part. So we're just going to go in with our little tweezers here and we are just going to pull all of those stencils up. Now I'm not going to make you sit and watch through all of that, so the magic of YouTube, here is all of the stencils pulled. And now once that is all cured, we're going to go in with 2 coats of epoxy. Now for the offsets. I hate to waste those inner sections of the offsets, so what I do here, just like my Valentine's one, is I take that stencil sheet and I remove the centers of the offsets that I'm going to need. As you can see here, it is the same sheet, one just has the offsets. So I just apply those centers to where the stencil section was on the stencil vinyl to show me which offsets I need to use. So I'm not having to try and figure out which ones were used, which ones weren't. That was the easiest way for me to keep it organized. And I don't waste those really pretty green clovers in this really awesome metallic vinyl. So once I get those all transferred to the stencil sheet and I know which offsets I'm going to use, I go ahead and start applying those offsets to the tumbler. Once we get those offsets all applied, we're now going to take those small little clovers and we're going to put those sporadically throughout the tumbler in the blank areas that feel like they need a little something more. You don't have to do this. I loved it on my Valentine's one, so I knew I wanted to do it on this one as well. But you can add as many or as few of these or none that you would like. Once we get those all applied, we're going to go in with our next coat of epoxy. And in this coat of epoxy, I'm going to add a little bit of Venus into my leftover epoxy. So I applied a thin coat of epoxy here, and then I'm applying some of that Venus into the measuring cup, and I am just going to sporadically put that throughout the tumbler. I'm going to avoid my large clover sections, but I am pulling it through those just smaller clovers, if you will. So this is just going to add a little bit of depth and dimension. It's not going to stand out as it's not like a dark green or something like that, but it's one of those subtle additions where it's like, oh, that's really cool when you're holding the tumbler up close. So that was kind of my thought process for the gold. Again, you really can't see it here too much, but I absolutely love how it turned out. Once that coat cures, we're going to go in with our final coat of epoxy and our tumbler is done. I loved the Valentine's Day one. I am obsessed with this one. I foresee maybe an Easter and a 4th of July one. I don't really know. We may have just a seasonal peekaboo Big Betty tumbler that we do on this channel. But I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. If you have any questions, as always, don't hesitate to ask. Again, I have everything listed and linked in the description box below, as well as my socials, my website where you can purchase these tumblers. And I think that's all that I have for you guys today. So I will see you guys again next week and have a fabulous rest of your day today.